Welcome back, folks. My name is Yana the Heretic, and this is my channel, Electromagnetic Identity. And there has been a great pause within this channel, and I promise it is all for good reason. I think that a lot of work lacks dimension, especially in this time frame. And I have been here slowly sculpting the dimensional aspects to the nth degree as a 5-1 heretic investigator, and getting down and revealing a lot more roots so that I can therefore add dimension to this channel, and the understanding will be easier and more digestible for someone coming in and being like, what the hell is human design and how does this apply to me? And funny enough, this gate is a difficult one. This is called the gate of shock, the arousing. Gate 51. This is located in our ego and heart center. And those that have an ego center defined, they are riveting with willpower. They have really strong force when you are around them. The people that are around those with ego definition, they are just wanting to go and do something. And once those people leave, they're like, oh shit, like, where was I in this process? I don't really want to do this right now. I'm too tired. So people that carry, especially this gate, they are the shock, the sparks, the spark plugs in a vehicle, because they initiate movement, especially because they're so individual. This is individual gate, the only one in the willpower center, the only one in the heart center. And this is the last gate of Micheal's reign, Archangel Micheal, the obedient son, the guardian and protector against spiritual warfare, which we're seeing a lot in 2026. So there's a lot of shocking things that have come to the surface this year. This is to be expected if you've been following astrology, if you've been following human design. There's this intense pressure to get to 2027. And this specific astrology of this year, we saw a fuck ton of Aries energy entering our field. And Aries is the perfect description of this gate as well. The Aries energy can be a warrior, somebody that is competitive to get to their goal and to be the first one to get to their goal. That is like definitely why people have ego. This is definitely heart power, heart fuel, because you need this heartfelt ability in order to get to your goals, or else you become the fool, you become the enemy, you become the tyrannical father, or the son that kills their father, in order to assume the throne. Those are all associated, and it's all associated with war. Aries energy is very much the warrior. So, if you look at a warrior, you're going to have this amazing drive, this heart, this reason why you're initiating yourself, through this quarter of initiation. This is really like sculpting and compressing down what it is that we stand for. And, 5 planets being in Aries around this time in April. This is filtering April 4th through the 9th. This is definitely a time frame where we saw a lot of things that were shocking, and it is interesting that, we saw Saturn being in Aries, and that is considered the fall of Saturn, which is, definitely the most detrimental state of Saturn, because those who have Saturn in Aries, they tend to be disembodied from what they're saying. They're disembodied from their heart center. So you can see people saying things without any emotion or sympathy. They could be very hurtful in what they're doing or saying, and they may not even feel anything about it, or, think about how they're affecting others. And we saw a lot of that come to fruition in April. And, this is also the ram. So the ram can be extremely stubborn and foolish. So you see yourself, pushing yourself to this degree without really feeling how your body feels. And then you get hurt. This is the metabolic fire. So you're overextending your fire. You have maybe hypoglycemia. Maybe you don't really know what your body needs because you're just like so focused on the flame and just getting things out there. And those are like some of the negative aspects, of course, of it. This is the impulsive fool that buys something or starts a business, or and then they realize, holy shit, like this isn't gonna like be what this time frame needs. This is an outdated like goal in my head, and now you've got a lease and like an agreement that you have to fulfill and like see through, and then you realize like, holy shit, like this isn't possible. So the polarizing aspect of that is putting water into your field, or just realizing like what's going on around you and being able to ground yourself, because Saturn in Aries is the lack of boundaries. This is like lack of privacy, and we're seeing a lot of that as well. Saturn is the planet of boundaries and time and, discipline, and it being in Aries, the spontaneous one, is not thinking about how you're going to move slowly through this process. You're just trying to get that instant gratification and that hit of like, okay, like this is going to happen at all costs, and not really being like embodied with the discipline and the slow movement of what is to come. So as we initiate ourselves and as we see initiation, this is like building walls with fire, and it's definitely so destructive to our culture. And, there are a lot of great aspects to having Aries come into our field after the Piscean age, where we were stuck and Saturn was stuck in Pisces for a really long time, which is, the abysmal sign, the sign that is lack of boundaries, and like the pseudo-spiritual aspects, where we're just like trying to heighten ourselves and like feel righteous, but we don't really have any of that groundedness to really know where to land. And it was great because we tested things out in this modernity. We were like figuring out where our spirituality was and how deep it was, and like we crossed all the boundaries in order to really see and understand. But as Saturn is in Aries, it is now, okay, well, the veil has completely gone away, and we see people for who they truly are, and things are rising to the surface that are extremely uncomfortable, and shocking, right? This is arousing shock because we realize the people that we have like really relied on as our role models are actually evil, are actually manipulative, and they rose to those heights through, you know, just stepping over others at all costs. And now it's their time to have, you know, justice. And you know, this sounds potentially like clickbait, but it's really a loaded gun, you know, it really is. And so we're seeing a lot of, you know, studies about fascia as well, and, you know, plasma. And these studies are helping us really filter out all the bullshit that is within us, you know, and allow our external plasma float, you know, the furthest, and ignite other people that resonate with us, you know. And this is like the science of the aura is coming to light and to fruition, where, you know, yeah, like we're initiating ourselves when we're needing to find those people that will listen to us, you know, or that will, you know, be attracted to the things that we are talking about. So there is a lot of dumping that is possible with the gate of shock, because this is, you know, those type of people that will say something just to have a reaction out of you, you know, and it could be really intense. It could be TMI, you know, and you're like, holy fuck, like I wasn't ready to hear that, you know. And that is exactly what the gate of shock is like. It could be funny, you know, a lot of people have different aspects of it where, you know, their individuality is either really like shocking because it's like politically persuasive in a certain way, where it's like, no, this is happening, you know, and we need to do something about it, and this is all of the negative things that can happen if we don't do something about it. This could be shocking in a funny way, where it's just like pranking, or, you know, causing like spasms in their environment so that it's like keeping you on your toes. And that can also get old if there's too much of it, right? These could cause people to have heart issues because you're always just like pranking them in these ways. And it can initiate a lot of fun, but it's also, you know, definitely initiating a lot of fear or panic. And this is yet again linked to the heart center. It could also initiate, you know, like a victim mindset, you know. So it's like, well, this is happening to me and all these things are happening to me. You know, it really depends if you have an emotional body as well with this gate, because you could be shocking people emotionally, where they're like riding the lows with you and the highs, and it's like, holy shit, like this person is extremely manic and I don't know whether to like feel good or bad around them. So the real beauty that lies in the ego center here in this centering circuit is to have a very strong heart and to have a very strong willpower associated with what it is that you're trying to share with the world, because this is an individual person. This is a unique individuality, and they are capable of, you know, really inspire people to be healthy, to have a healthy mindset, to have a healthy passions, you know, to really be able to ground, you know, what they're really trying to do. So, you know, definitely being that pulling force, that drive that, you know, makes people want to do better. And these are the role models, you know. But if you don't have a healthy heart center, if, you know, you're not really centering yourself, you're not really being able to connect this ego to your identity, or your sacral to like actually do something with your individuality, because that is where this centering circuit really connects. Is it's going from your sacral to your identity to your willpower. And this is what I consider to be the most important gate within this circuit. So, because it is that driving force, that magnetism that pulls your identity into shape and then gives it energy to sustain that circuit. And this is all about response and responsibility. And if somebody has a really solid heart, they're going to be competitive in these really etheric, esoteric ways, or, you know, be really fueled to physically do something, you know, about these challenges that we're facing. And it's really calling us to like strive towards, you know, seeing that person as a role model and being like, yeah, like you're the fucking person that's going to guide us through 2026, 2027. And like realizing that within yourself, you know, your individual center as yourself, and like teaching other people as well to be healthy, or what that looks like. So this is really not about passivity anymore, this time frame, you know, and it's really about, you know, what are you obedient to, as this is a Micheal gate. You know, this is like not just being obedient to the fallacy. It's about being obedient to whatever centers you. And ever since this transit started, I felt this surge in my chest, you know, this like constant like movement. And, you know, this is definitely me being the craziest manifesting generator, because I feel it in my eyes, in my temples. It's like this like energy to like really do something about what's coming in externally, to keep going at all costs, and responding to the environment, and like having myself go out there so that I have the opportunity to respond to others. And you know, it's definitely can cause me to manifest and generate energy until I drop. You know, I've definitely been more tired in this time frame, because it's got that disembodiment, right, of Aries being in Saturn, where you're like moving and moving and moving, and then you realize, holy shit, like my body's like, you know, I have to take more care of myself and give myself more rest, and have to consciously think about that. And that is another point that is wise to make. You know, are you somebody that has this gate in your conscious personality profile, or do you have this gate unconsciously in your design profile? Because it may be harder for you to locate that, and may be harder for you to realize the effect that you have on others, because it's in your unconscious design. You're not aware of how much you're affecting your environment, because you're disembodied to that like effect, and like you don't realize that you're like really making people disperse away from you, you know, or you're not realizing how much of an influence you are to other people as well, if your heart is really healthy and connected. So this requires a lot of structure and discipline, you know, to become that warrior, to center yourself. You know, meditation in any form, whether it's moving or, you know, lying down and sitting, is really important at this time. Most likely more people are called to moving, because that is what our platform of, you know, America at least really looks like, is just constantly like trying to compete with others in intelligence. And, you know, that is why AI is like so heavily prevalent in this realm right now, is because we're just like, oh, we have access to all this free information. Well, I'm going to get it before you do, and I'm going to ask all these questions before you do. And then I'm going to be like, therefore, making this business evolve before you do, you know? And then it's like, well, what are you doing? Like, are you actually thinking about the repercussions of what you're doing? But it's also the, you know, this like energy where you have to prove that this system that you're following works. You know, it's no like Piscean disillusionment and just like hope and, you know, faith or anything like that. You have to really kind of prove that what we live by actually works. It actually has a material structure that we can like go back to and physically like work on. This is about material power, and it's like the fall of pseudo spiritual cult leaders. You know, the world really is lacking positive role models. So this is like your calling. If you're watching this video and you have gate 51, like, you know, definitely feel aroused for what I'm saying, you know, because like you're meant to really do the best work right now. And like it is harder to ground that with this placement. And let's see. It's about accountability, holding people accountable as well. You know, if you're a role model, you're going to have uncomfortable situations and conversations, like, because you're holding yourself accountable to a certain degree, and therefore you have to hold other people accountable. But you can't, you know, be that like really intense boss, right? You're going to have to like figure out how to like really communicate properly with other people in order to have them not just be like, wow, you're really mean, you're like the worst boss that I've ever had, but like I have to like do this work because this is the only job I have, and jobs are hard to come by right now, you know. So it is more important to like step into other people's shoes when you have this gate, if possible at all. You know, like learning about yourself is all about realizing how to polarize those things that are very difficult about you. And, you know, some people will never be like that. They'll just be like, this is who I am, and I don't want to change for anybody. And I don't want to be more digestible. I don't want to be more, you know, empathetic or connect in that way. And that is very much a possibility for the individuals out there. You know, they're not looking to like be that role model, but they like are within their identity themselves, because, you know, like some of the most amazing scientists, you know, they are people that are isolated and they're doing their own little speculations, and, you know, I can give them this false like godly aspect where they don't have any morals, you know, and it could either inspire people for the worst or for, you know, the best. You know, justice definitely has to be dealt in this time frame, and it is really hard to deal with the reality of things and to find the truth within this time frame. It is looking, you know, at human greed, you know, and being able to deal with it within our justice system, because we're really seeing people for who they are. We know that our neighbor somewhere is Republican or Democratic, or, you know, really like shocking people with like, what do you believe in? Where do you stand on this line? You know, this boundary line, and being angry about the boundary line and like figuring out how justice fits within the liberal, the whatever the fuck political shit that's going on. So it's fiery walls. And we cannot disassociate. Like, it just doesn't call for that anymore. Like, people can try to disassociate. It may get you like really upset and so shocked that it can cause, you know, this paralyzation within your system. But like, you know, eventually, like, it won't take as long as it would have in the past. You know, it's gonna basically like make you deal with your shit in order to stand up, you know, and not just like completely self-abandon in escapism. Like, that's not possible within this astrology anymore, you know, because like it might have been easier for you to disassociate and just drink your life away while you're working your job, but like that's not gonna happen well, because people are like, who can I rely on, who's actually gonna be there and show up for this work, you know, and jobs are scarce even in America. You know, these politics are really burning into, you know, our neighborhood, our state, our country. You know, now that we're handed the truth about the people that run this shit show, like, where do I stand in it all? It's all about I, you know. There's no room to really look away because the boundaries are starting to shift into the I. And the energy behind the warrior and the fool are the same, but it could be a revelation or a complete like disaster. What are we gonna do about privacy these ages? You know, what are we gonna do about our own personal agency within these ages? We're starting to have to like figure out how to create that privacy because our boundaries are like burning, even though we really are individual, right? You know, like there's at least some part of us that is. The warrior is competitive for the right reasons. You know, this is a person that is a warrior within sports, you know, a warrior within politics. Like they're definitely standing at some pinnacle of responsibility, because this is exactly responsibility. They are responding into their environment so quickly. They may not have any awareness. That is like not part of the centering circuit at all, you know, and it requires you to have, you know, splenic or emotional definition or some awareness center in there that allows you to really like feel and perceive other people. You know, these people can be entertaining, you know, super, super entertaining, like sarcastic, you know. This is the presence that shakes up people's peace. And it's not really like a peaceful person by any means. But they are the spokespeople. This is like a part of the channel of initiation. This is the literal like main meat of this quarter of initiation. And it's really an example of creating something that's never been seen before and really diving headfirst into its wormhole. And creating like actual physical material realities, you know, like temples, like really things that are a legacy. You know, these people definitely can trigger you for good reasons and bad reasons. You know, if there's any word for this gate, it is triggered. And it is, you know, really required for you to love yourself deeply and thrive unapologetically and instill love into your accomplishments and really like be proud of yourself for everything that you've changed building this legacy. Finding love for how different you are, although people will always be triggered, you know, by this. Like, you know, there's varying views on your life, your individual. Like, people are looking at how different you are. And the default is to picking yourself apart, you know, because other people are picking you apart. Well, what is this person like at home? And like, what is all their drama? Like, what's the tea? You know, well, maybe they grew up here and went to school here. So like, you know, how could this person be like blah, blah, blah at the top of this, like an inspirator, you know? So it's really being like strong and centered to be that person that can handle all of this. And it's really hard, you know, like my partner has this gait and he's a 6'3" profile. So it's like people are handing you your mistakes, your constant like trial and error. And you're like, fuck, I have to be accountable like times 10 for this. And it's a, you know, he's a projector. So it's like, you know, having the energy to deal with that isn't really like always available, and it can cause a lot of isolation and depression and really make your heart like Saturnian and cold, you know. And it's funny that, you know, they chose ice as the freaking like thing, you know, the word to describe those people that are like ripping people away from their homes, from their lives. And it's like ice is like cold and like very Saturnian. It's like cold and without emotion, without, you know, heart. So this was a huge emanation, and it's like weird how the English language just depicted that within the best fucking way. It's fucking sad, you know. But yeah, the channel of initiation was in transit for this part of April, and it definitely shook us out of our own delusions. It is the sleeping giant that awakens within you from the Piscean tides of mystical indulgence. You know, we're awakening from the matrix puddle that we were like looking into. You know, this whole watery veil is completely gone and dried up, you know, and it streamed a docile climate, and now we're not docile whatsoever. We all have extreme opinions about how things should go. We start to walk the walk, you know, though, and not just like talk bullshit about ourselves, you know, because we're gonna be held accountable. If you're not freaking walking the walk and you're just talking the talk, you will be brutally, you know, justified. Each, you know, spiritual path moves very differently, and it doesn't come by following the rules, you know, and that is definitely what we're seeing, you know, as we progress in this individual age. You know, we don't have to like really, once this time frame dissipates and we're like well into 2027, I feel like the extension really is not having to talk about ourselves as much and what we believe in, you know. We're just gonna have more actions come out, you know, because the individual, it is about, you know, it's about, you know, contagion, or like being, not contagion, sorry. It's about penetration. You know, this is definitely on a cross of penetration. And like Marilyn Manson, for a great example, has this channel. It's like penetrating the culture with something that is so shocking and so different, and like, you know, your mom is still gonna talk about how he affected, you know, you at a young age, that like made you A, B, or C, you know, and like exposed you to things at an early age that like really brought upon horror to your mother and to your grandmother and generations prior. And, you know, that's like the best example of this arousing and shock channel. And gate 25 is the spirit of the self. This is like really like connecting you in spirit, like the spirit is there, you know, because the 51s may kind of lack that connection, you know, to like initiating something, you know, like in physical material. So we see, you know, how all of these things can be so vastly different depending on, you know, your strategy and your authority and what kind of body you have, whether it's an intuitive body, an emotional body. So I'm hoping that this added a lot of examples and dimension. And, you know, this is exactly why it's been such a, you know, descriptive process for me to get to the root and to really like expose, you know, what these gates mean. And I'm sure that in the future it'll go even deeper within the I Ching and the Kabbalah. And, you know, I have no idea how long those videos will be, but I hope to describe these to the nth degree where, you know, it can become a cosmic and grounded like process. So choose justice outside of obedience. That is the last thing I'm going to add. You know, sovereignty really reigns here. Other channels that were in transit in April around this time is the channel of community, the channel of inspiration, the channel of power, the channel of perfected form, and the channel of awareness. So there's a lot of heart, there's a lot of, you know, community, there's a lot of like figuring out where you stand in this really complex system and world as it is equally rising and falling. So the questions of the week are, who do you know that just really pisses you off, but at the same time it gets you going, it gets you like feeling and like moving either away from it or, you know, having an opinion? How do you feel about loner individuals? Do you typically see them and instantly try to rule them out because they don't have a tribe? You know, it's always the quiet ones that are the problem, right? Or are you attracted to the ones that are different? Why do you feel that connection? How does competition play a huge role in nature? What does healthy competition look like and feel like within your body, within the world? When at first you don't succeed, how do you inject love into yourself so you can try and try again? And do not allow yourself to fail. That is it for Gate 51. This lovely interpretation has a lot of heart in it. And I appreciate you guys watching and tuning in. And I will see you on the next video. It's going to be a new Godhead, Janush or Janice. I'm not sure. If anyone knows, let me know how to pronounce it.